Dogs Don't Wear Pants 2019. It was a curious movie. I expected something arty-farty, and it was, without being excessively so. I had heard in advance that there was not much dialogue, and that always sets off an alarm bell in my mind. As much as I like pure cinema, visual storytelling, etc., I also find it to possibly be a bit on the boring side. A lot of movies that don't have much dialogue can actually be a bit of a slog, I have found. I do like my characters to talk to each other, to express thoughts and ideas and emotions, to discuss what's going on. When no one says anything and it's just lots of silences and brooding, people looking at windows for whole minutes and nothing being said, that can be pretty tedious. And I was, I didn't, I wouldn't go as far as to say I expected that to happen in this movie, but it was a very real possibility. So I was pleasantly surprised that it didn't resort to that. And there is a fair amount of dialogue. The characters don't spend time talking to each other about their emotions and generally what they are feeling and trying to achieve. They don't talk to each other, they don't communicate in that way, but it's not excessively non-verbal. I think excessively visual movies have a tendency to be lacking in depth. They can, if the characters don't talk to each other, they can become rather self-indulgent and arty, with people just brooding rather than actually talking. And sometimes you want to go, look, if you people would just communicate just a little bit with each other, this movie would actually move on. I don't think the movie is particularly deep. It's not a very complicated plot. It's a fairly simple A to B to C plot with pop psychology driving it right from the start. We know the man's deal, that he's trying to recreate this moment when his wife died because it brings him closer to her. There's nothing complicated or it's not even an idea the movie explores in any great depth. He tries to recreate it multiple times with the dominatrix, and it gets more extreme with every session, and obviously things go too far and leads to obsession and excess. It's such an obvious story. You can, even before the movie starts, you read the description and you go, oh, this will be about such and such. You can guess everything that happens, maybe not the exact details, but the story is very basic and not convoluted. There's not many characters, so there's not a lot of moving parts. It basically moves from one session to the next session to the next, and then there's some complications stopping them from doing sessions, but it's not the most complicated or in-depth plot. The movie could have been told, the story could have been told in a short movie of say 20 or 30 or 40 minutes. At 105 minutes, it's slightly self-indulgent. The movie is not slow. I would describe it as deliberately paced. I find a lot of Stanley Kubrick movies get described as deliberately paced when really, no, they are just slow. What I would say makes a deliberately paced movie is that something is always happening. It's not meandering, it's just not rushing itself to the next part. And the story is not moving forward with any great haste, but it's not meandering. And I don't feel the movie is taking any liberties with our time and attention. It's not self-indulgent. the movie could be faster, but not necessarily by much. At least the deliberate pacing, stroke possibly slow pacing, did not annoy me, and I am someone who does get annoyed with slow pacing. The lead character is actually not that likeable. He is the lead character, so the movie tells its story through him. So, pretty much by default, you care and have sympathy with his point of view. But if you actually stop and think about it, and I did, because the deliberate pace gives you time to think, I thought to myself, actually, I don't think I like you very much and what you are trying to achieve. Again, it's one of those things, if a character's actually communicated and talked and he actually explained to the dominatrix, what I am trying to achieve is this, how can we achieve this without getting dangerous, then everything would be fine. But of course, there would be no plot. So, because they don't really communicate with each other, things go out of control and he becomes a bit of a scary stalker type person. Now, we know he is probably harmless, at least to her, but I can't help but see him as being, well, a bit of a scary stalker type. I actually had minimal sympathy for him because I did think he was going too far, and I felt sorry for the dominatrix having to put up with him. Although the dominatrix, it turns out, is actually not that bothered by him. The climactic scene, the last impromptu session, I don't think it makes much sense. You could argue I've overlooked how damaged the characters are, but to me it went way too far. Now, a movie like this is about extreme characters doing extreme stuff, so I'm probably missing the point, but I think what the characters did was too extreme, and I did not see how they got to this place where they were willing to do this. It felt like the scene came out of nowhere. She suddenly proposes, oh, if you do this, I'll do that for you. And it's just a case of, I'm sorry, why would you want to do this? Why would he agree to do it? Why would you go through with it? Why would you keep going through with it? Because it does take a while to happen. There is the opportunity for it to be stopped by any of them. Both of them could have said, hey, actually, let's not do this, or let's skip this. I don't understand it. I think the ending of that emotional climactic scene doesn't really make a lot of sense. There isn't enough context to explain why they are willing to do this. But then again, maybe the characters are just that damaged and I just couldn't really see it. I did not pick up that level of damage from the characters. They were doing something very, very extreme, and I don't see why they were doing it. Even as a plot point, it doesn't really make any sense. They could have done something far less odd. It feels slightly contrived, as though it's harking back to late 70s, early 80s video nasties, almost like baiting the BBFC, British Censorship Board. This is a Finnish movie, by the way, so obviously they couldn't care less about the British Board of Film Classification. But the point is, it feels almost like a deliberate talking point scene. Oh, you got to see the movie where such and such happens, and it feels tacked on. I really don't buy the scene. I don't understand why the characters are doing it, or why the plot actually needs something this extreme to happen. It was slightly gratuitous in that sense. It was unpleasant to watch, but it's not the most disturbing scene in the movie. I was not disturbed by it. I will admit I put my hand up to the TV to not look at the top half of the screen because, well, who really needs to see this? I also did that when he was picking at his thumbnail, when he was talking to the other doctor. It's a case of, some things you just don't really need to see. It's not even about squeamishness, it's more a case of, do I really need to see this? Anyway, that scene was not the most disturbing because it really had no impact on me. It was unpleasant to watch and slightly confusing as a what's the point of this scene? Why does this happen? But it was too contrived, too much almost like censorship baiting. Hey, here's a cool scene that the censors are going to hate. I think the more disturbing scene was one of the few times we see the dominatrix performing another session without the lead character, and I think it's a woman is on the floor and she is putting hot wax onto the woman. I think it's just the performance, the screams and the begging, oh please make it stop, no, I've gone too far, I've said the safe word, please stop it. And the content of the scene itself is not necessarily that weird or disturbing. It's more the performance of, and I am assuming it's an actress, I'm not sure, it was filmed in wide shot so I'm not really sure, but I think it was an actress, and just the performance, the wailing, the look, that's it, no, seriously, stop, please stop and do something about this. That was that kind of sticks in the mind more than anything else. It's just a 1 minute throwaway scene, but that's probably the most memorable part of the film, I would say. I would give Dogs Don't Wear Pants 5 out of 10. It was okay. There was a lot of things to like about it, but I don't think the story, which was very quite small and compact, there was not a lot to it. I don't think there was all that much depth to it, and I don't think the characters were all that deep, and the story was explored in anything more than a surface level. I could describe the movie in something like 5 or 6 sentences, and that would actually describe pretty much the whole movie. I don't think there's a lot to it. It reminded me of 2 films, Matrice, which I think is a boring movie. I really don't like it very much. I would not recommend this, but it is very similar, I think, in feel and style, but nowhere near as interesting as Dogs Don't Wear Pants. And the other movie is, with a terrible title, Sleeping Beauty, the version starring Emily Browning. This is a very interesting Australian art movie from 2011. This is really interesting and I would recommend it. Dogs Don't Wear Pants has a lot to like about it, but I don't think it really becomes more than the plot summary. I could summarise it in not too many sentences, and there really isn't much more to it than that. It's a movie that hints at depths rather than actually has depths, and I feel the characters are not explored deeply enough. The lead character, the thing is, his fetish, for want of a better word, the thing he's trying to achieve with the strangulation, it's pop psychology. I don't feel it goes any further than the surface level of, oh, he experienced this near drowning when his wife died, and he's trying to recreate that moment because it brings back memories. I don't know if it's sense memories or whatever brings him closer to his dead wife. And you could argue there's not much more you can explore than that. I don't know, but I just don't feel as though the film goes any further. Once you've seen him achieve what he wanted with the first strangulation scene, there really isn't any great need as a viewer to see him do it multiple times.